The following series was recommended by my friend Janelle. Shout out Janelle. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to her art Instagram down in the description below, so be sure to check that out. Mr. Samuel's Tea Time is a series on YouTube created by a woman named Yara Asmar. Now, this is not Yara's only content, but to my knowledge, it is her longest series and basically her most ambitious project to date. If you would like to go ahead and check out some of Yara's other projects, as well as, anything on our channel, I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to it down in the description below. As always, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. If you like the content that you saw in this video, please be sure to subscribe to Something Sinister. Episode 1 is titled Welcome Home. It opens with 3 characters and yellow text reading Mr. Samuel's Tea Time Stories for Good Kids and Confused Adults. The 3 characters seem to be pleasantly surprised by our arrival, stating that they haven't seen us in a while and thought that we might have forgotten them. Welcome home, they say. The set in which the trio are sitting in is very abstract. The floor and ceiling are pitch black and decorated with neon numbers. The walls are anything but straight. Windows have sharp, pointy edges. It is very reminiscent of the German expression era of silent film. Yara even comments about this architecture in the description. She says, French anarchist Lorenzic's colored cells were the first use of modern art as a method of psychotechnic torture. The cells were as inspired by ideas of geometric abstraction and surrealism as they were by avant-garde art theories on psychological properties of colors. The walls, which were curved and covered with mind-altering patterns of cubes, squares, straight lines, and spirals which utilized tricks of color, perspective, and scale to cause mental confusion and distress. With an emphasis on set building, the disintegrating world of Mr. Samuel manifests as a colored cell through a set that is falling apart. The characters are as follows. Mr. Samuel is on the left, Mrs. Madeline is on the right, and the small flower character in the middle is not named, or at least not yet. The flower, despite its small stature, speaks in a low, deep voice. He tells Madeline that he is going to go away. Madeline says that he can't do this as she has built her house in his bones, and if he has to go, then where will she live? A snail puppet soon arrives in the misshapen window. This character is fittingly titled Mr. Snail Mail. He hands off a letter to Mr. Samuel. The letter reads, Dear Mr. Samuel, time is confusing and I don't know what's going on. How do I stop the horrors? I am terrified. Please make it stop. Mr. Samuel's solution to this is to make your bed every day. His reasoning for this? Well, because it's important. Mr. Snailmail decides to go home. As he states, he is a snail and carries his home with him on his back everywhere that he goes. Madeline then speaks in a whispering tone. Home is nowhere, because everywhere is hell. Home is nowhere, not even in your mother's bed. Home is nowhere, not even inside your own head. The flower and Mr. Snailmail then disappear, and Mr. Samuel gives us a bedtime story. We cut to static. Mr. Samuel and Madeline tell us goodbye before the credits roll. During this time, Mr. Samuel tells a joke. He says, What's the difference between a house and a prison? He then says that he forgets the punchline, but thinks that it involves something about windows. I tried searching for the answer to this joke or riddle, thinking that it might be a common one. I couldn't find an answer. However, I think its relevance lies within the fact that the characters in Mr. Samuel's Tea Time are both home and in prison. Prison in the sense that they are not free to leave. Episode 2 is titled It's Today Again, and it introduces the fact that there is now a large hole forming in the middle of the room. Mr. Samuel and Madeline are both surprised to see us again. Our theme of this video is time. Samuel explains that good time is when the hands on the clock are on the right side, and bad time is when the hands are on the left side. The flower character then shows up again. He tells us the story of a man who lived alone. We then see this man, who appears to be some sort of old hunchback. He invites us to have tea with him. He says that he has waited for this moment for a very long time, and, as he puts it, waiting is the most visceral sort of loneliness. He then goes on to explain that he is sick of tea time, but it's something that he must do because it is tea time. When we find the trio once again, Samuel receives a new letter. The letter reads, "The moon is getting closer. I hope you all locked your doors as well and are hiding under the blankets." Madeline says it is time for sleep, and Snail Mail says that time is a bunch of jumbled up scribbles. "Time smells like banana bread," says the flower. "Time smells like my mother's disappointment," replies Snail Mail. Madeline has a different perspective as well. She says that while some think that time is a straight line, others think that it is like a donut. She then sings a song about how both interpretations are incorrect. She says that time is shaped like a labyrinth, specifically one that is closed on all sides. Past and future do not exist here in this labyrinth, and you are stuck inside the present time. "Time is shaped like a prison," Madeline sings, "a series of vertical bars. You can act like it's not there, but you know it's everywhere, and every morning you wake up, it's today again." We end with the start of a bedtime story before the video jumps ahead to the credits of the show. Samuel tells Madeline that she is a bad clock, and that since her arrival, time has gone much slower. The episode then ends. This episode's theme, time, is something very relevant to the characters. They have been stuck on this children's television set for an unspecified amount of time. Samuel's comment to Madeline about time being slower since she has arrived tells us that she has not always been a character here on the show, or at least that she arrived later than Samuel, and perhaps even the flower and snail mail. Samuel has a certain distaste towards Madeline, as her presence has made time move slower. Think about staring at a clock. Time always seems to move slower this way, and that's how Samuel feels looking at Madeline, whose face is literally a ticking clock. Madeline also uses the word prison again, a recurring theme in the series. Time is a prison or labyrinth. It is something that is not easy to escape from. Episode 3 is titled "A Funeral is a Party." Here we find our characters looking particularly glum. Snail Mail asks Madeline if she has been watering her plants recently. Madeline points out that she has, but the sunlight is weird in this place. As we get a wider look, we can see that the set has become even more distorted. It twists like the inside of a tornado. Madeline begins to sing a song about how the sunlight is different in this place. It kills the things that it should feed, she says. It doesn't warm things like it should. It shines brighter than it should. Snail Mail then gives Samuel a letter. It turns out that the letter is a funeral announcement. The funeral is for Dr. Delight. Madeline is very upset by this and can't comprehend that even your friends die someday. It turns out that Dr. Delight died from old age. The flower character then shows up, and the four decide to celebrate Dr. Delight's life. They decide that a funeral is a party. The flower then sings a song about this. He says that even though they miss him, they are glad to have known him. The episode ends with a conversation between Samuel and Madeline. He says that she is a bad clock because she can't keep time. Madeline then explains that time cannot be kept or contained, and that a clock is not a prison. Think back to the previous episode where Madeline mentions that time is like a labyrinth or a prison. These are two things that are seemingly inescapable. Well, by the time that we have reached the end of this episode, it would seem that Madeline has changed her perception on that. A clock is not a prison, she says. Time cannot be contained. This statement might explain Madeline's absence in the final episode. The final episode of Mr. Samuel's Tea Time does not have a title. It opens with Mr. Samuel staring at us. He says that after all this time, it's still you. There are not many things that I can count on, he says, but I can always count on you. At this point, we can see that Mr. Samuel is sitting in the middle of a seemingly endless black room. The floor has maintained its spiral in the middle, and the final window looks like it's being sucked in. You never really leave this place. You never really could you? You're always welcome here, Samuel says. Samuel tells us that he wishes he could go outside. The flower character then appears. He asks Samuel, "Who do you talk to when we're not here?" We then see a shot of a body, the flower character being connected to the arm in a typical puppet fashion. The body then disappears randomly. Samuel says that he thinks about leaving sometimes, and the flower tells him that this is home. How can Samuel want to leave? It's all he's ever known. A song is then sung by the flower in the disembodied voice of Madeline. They say, "When you are thinking about leaving this place, don't pull a Houdini and disappear without a trace. Others have tried before you. It's not much, but it's our home. There's nothing outside that we don't have in here." Samuel closes his eyes and sways happily as the song continues. Once it's over, the flower disappears. Samuel closes his eyes and the shot cuts to static. The audio from A Funeral is a Party Song plays as the final credits roll. As of making this video, this is the final upload from Mr. Samuel's Tea Time. Yara has since gone on to upload other videos on her channel, but this seems to be the end of Mr. Samuel. The question is now, what did it all mean? At its heart, Mr. Samuel's Tea Time is about revisiting childhood. The show is constructed very similar to something like Mr. Rogers or even Sesame Street. The show asks the question, what happens to Mr. Rogers or, say, Bert and Ernie or Elmo when kids stop showing up to watch them? After watching this series, I think I have some of the answers, but overall, the message is not singular. If you're watching this and you're a teenager or an adult, how often do you think about or reflect on shows that you watched during your formative years as a child? Speaking for myself, this is something I do fairly regularly. With the growing audience for nostalgia-related content, I think Mr. Samuel's Tea Time is something that many of those people can relate to. These once important figures, Mr. Samuel, the flower, or even snail mail, all served as an imperative role in their prime, teaching children, but what they fail to realize is that the children will eventually grow up, while they, fictional characters, will always stay the same. It's like having a favorite toy that you played with as a kid. Eventually, you grow up and perhaps you're moving out of your parents' house. You find that favorite toy tucked away in a closet somewhere, and its appearance immediately sparks a plethora of memories. But you're an adult now, and you have no use for that toy anymore. In the episodes we see, it is evident that Mr. Samuel and the gang are going through the motions. It's all they've ever known. At one point, Mr. Samuel grows frustrated with Madeline and makes a comment about her arrival causing issues. This comment means that Madeline was not always there. I think that Madeline is unique to these 4 episodes alone. For the kids who grew up watching Mr. Samuel's Tea Time, I don't think they ever saw Madeline. I think Madeline is a physical embodiment of time, which has only become apparent to Samuel and friends when they realize that all of their children have grown up. This realization also causes the set which the show took place on to start collapsing in on itself. By the time that we find Mr. Samuel in the final episode, the set is reduced to a singular window. Pretty soon, that window and possibly even Mr. Samuel himself will be sucked into the void of nothingness, existing only in the memories of the children who watched him. There is an interesting and compelling quote from Madeline in the first episode. She says to the flower that she has built her home in his bones. Because of this, the two can never separate. This is another reference to the everlasting impact that TV shows have on children. They build their home in the minds of their audience, which the audience then ends up taking with them. These shows create their first perceptions of the world. A lot of the time, these perceptions are exaggerated. Everyone is nice. Everyone in the world wants to help you. The world itself is a friendly place. Well, then the audience goes out into the world and they realize that it's not always like this. They then find comfort in reflecting on the shows that once gave them these positive perceptions, like Mr. Samuel's Tea Time. That is the essence of nostalgia and why Mr. Samuel's Tea Time is so relevant. That is all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a comment down below letting me know what kind of content you would like to see from Something Sinister as we head on further into 2024. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next video.